Beauty and the Beast, an acceptance of addiction. This is my testimony. God has helped me through this, y'all. Part 1, The Road to the Castle. Before I read that, I would like to coincide a Bible verse with it. Proverbs 12:10. Whoever is righteous has regard for the life of his beast, but the mercy of the wicked is cruel. Beauty and the Beast, an acceptance of addiction. The Road to the Castle, Part 1. Though ever so faintly, I remember hearing, "Boy, you're a beast," several times in my life. One of these times I remember I was drinking excessively. So excessively, I was using a funnel to drink 102 proof gin. I thought at the time I was showing out, trying to impress others. Boy, was I wrong. See, what I was actually doing was setting myself up. I had been through several treatment places before this for drugs. Any and many of them. If you gave it to me, I would do it. At that time, I just wanted to fit in. That's very hard to do when you're different, which we all are. We're different, but all the same, because God has purpose for you. See, I wanted to fit in so bad, I almost killed myself several times. I would drink till I fell out, or drug till I wasn't me anymore. This was in my failure that God gave me grace. As I funneled that 102 proof gin, one day I passed out and woke up 3 days later with alcohol poisoning and pancreatitis. It wasn't until years later I realized He saved me from death by showing me this was going to kill me. Even though I continued to drink for a while longer, I ended up with a DUI. I was sent to another program where God kind of sat me down and showed me my struggles could help others. Well, for 6 months, I sobered up and thought to myself, why were you drinking? Your father was killed by a drunk driver. Now look at you, Mr. DUI. I wanted so bad to see the guy who accidentally murdered my father when I was 4 and let him know even though my grandparents didn't forgive him, I did. This wouldn't happen. I wrote a good bit during that 6 months, and some of that is still used today to help people in a book called The Voices That Often Go Unheard by Jessica Haney. God was moving in my life, but I would eventually deny Him again and start using drugs again, going from one extreme to the next. At least I quit drinking. About the time I got out, Spicer K2 came out, along with bath salts. Well, I like smoking weed, and I like the way meth opened up my mind, per se. So if I could find legal weed, K2, and legal meth, bath salt, I would be okay. This was setting myself up again. I still couldn't see God's path for me through the clouds of addiction. I was lost and wandering down a long, dark, lonely road. Part 2, The Castle Dungeon. Daniel 5:21. He was driven from among the children of mankind, and his mind was made like that of a beast, and his dwelling was with wild donkeys. He was fed grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High God rules the kingdom of mankind and sets over it whom He will. I still drank for a little while longer, just slowing myself down, or so I said. I just switched from liquor to beer, and from weed, coke, and meth to K2 and bath salts. 2 days before bath salts became illegal, I remember being up for 3 days. I dropped a friend off at the hospital, 2 blocks from the hospital, in nothing but a towel, and told him, when you get there, you don't know me. He had overdosed, and they had to give him a shot to calm him down. He had even ran next door to where we were at naked to drink pickle juice from the fridge. This stuff was bad, even beastly itself. Later on that same night, the police ended up showing up to the house we were at. I ran out the back door, outrunning who I labeled as a crackhead. See, he had been in the bathroom, taking the molding off the wall, looking for more drugs. Well, I hid and watched as the police searched the whole house. It was nothing more than a welfare check. The house owner's mother was worried about him. It had been a week he had not contacted her, not 3 days. I knew then I didn't need this stuff. Not the 40s of beer, not the bath salts, not the K2. Now all illegal in my state, but not in the one next to it. I stopped using the bath salts because they got very hard to find. I also quit drinking because I kept getting hospitalized. My pancreas got worse. I now had low blood sugar or hypoglycemia. Thank you, bad decisions. I continued to smoke K2, then known as Spice, or where I'm from, clone. The doctors were now prescribing promethazine and Dilaudid for nausea and pain, setting me up even further. Oh, that crafty, tricky, sly devil. I continued to try to quit on my own to no avail. The spice was hard to quit, and now I was high off my prescribed medications. But these had my name on them, right, wrong, another trick. Just like since it's legal, it's right. A web of deceit and lies had me, and I couldn't get loose. I was caught in my own poisonous prison, a dungeon of drugs and deceit. Part 3, Loosening the Chains. It's now several years later, and I have moved to a dark place in my life. From the outside, all looks like I'm fine. On the inside, nothing was all right. I was trapped in my own mind. I had a home, well, a roof over my head, and lots of friends, so I thought. In reality, I was lonely in my 3-bedroom home, to which addiction wouldn't even let me strive. I was captive in my own home, in thoughts I couldn't escape. In my mind, I was escaping by helping others to escape their reality. Really, what I was doing was trapping them in mine. I would offer housing, food, and at the same time offer drugs. This wasn't help or friendship. This was hurt and fiendishness. I was being controlled by addiction, pride, and a feeling of wanting. Reality is life is harsh, and no one is needed in your life but God. I remember sitting in this house trapped one day, and I had nothing to roll my spice in, so I used a piece of paper I ripped out of the Gideon's Bible. I rolled up and lit up. About halfway through smoking this Bible joint, I heard a voice say, "Put it out, roll it in your fingers, and read it aloud." Man, I tell you what, I thought I was tripping. I wasn't. I looked up at my buddy who was smoking with me. He said to me, "Well, read it." I was stunned. I rolled the Bible joint of K2 in my fingers and read it aloud. It was half burnt and should not have made sense, but it did. Through the half burnt up paper I read, "Fire destroys everything. God can rebuild from the ashes." I dropped the joint, now shocked. Was this the voice of God? I asked my buddy, and he heard it as well, and was just as shocked. Even though shocked, later that day I finished smoking that joint. It never got me high for some reason. Well, it wasn't maybe a couple days more. The same voice says, "You can't see me. You can't see my path for you through the clouds of addiction." I just knew I was crazy now. I checked myself into the mental hospital seeking help. Bad thing is, I only needed God. I told the hospital I was hearing voices. That was a mistake. Now they're giving me more meds, and now I'm not just hearing God, I'm seeing tall shadows in my room. I was scared, but that voice was still there, telling me now not to take my psych meds, to spit them out. They were clouding your vision. God was slowly removing my chains of addiction, but I was far from leaving the castle. Part 4. Galatians 6:2. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. After leaving the 6th floor or psych floor of the Gadsden Regional Hospital, I decided to not even go back to the home I had been living at. I made my way towards Huntsville, Alabama, to go to the mission, a place I had heard about while on the psych floor. Reality was I just thought I was headed to the mission. It was more like God had me on a mission. I made it to Huntsville and couldn't get in the mission program because I had no ID. They referred me to a soup kitchen down the road who couldn't assist either. I again was referred to the Salvation Army on Seminole Drive. They were not supposed to let me in with no ID, but they did. God had a plan. I was accepted into their drug and alcohol program. I wasn't there long until I realized there was people in this very program doing spice. I decided if I couldn't outrun my problem, I would find an answer for it. I started noticing also other things wrong with the place. For one, my 3rd day there, the lady over the place, an ex-police officer, says she would rather lock someone up for a small amount of weed rather than someone who is driving drunk. Did she forget I just told her my dad was killed by a drunk driver? Just wow. Furthermore, as I was serving the homeless, I was told not to give seconds. Being greedy with what God has given you is not good. Isaiah 55:1 is the verse God told me to put on the door. Come everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Well, suffice to say, seconds were served without man's permission. A little while longer passed and an elderly black gentleman entered the program. He was disabled. The first day there, he was upset and left because he couldn't work. And yet the program was still not only going to work him, they were going to take 80% of his check. And mind you, he didn't get paid for his work. I wanted to leave with him, but God told me to wait. I did, and 3 days later, God told me to leave. I argued for a moment, then did as he asked. Well, another guy who left at the same time as me, but for his own reasons, left with me. That night, I slept under a bridge ministering to this guy and fighting through Jesus, part of his battle with him. The next morning, I had the urge to go get the man coffee because he had been drinking the night before. I walked out from under the bridge and with $2 in my pocket and faith in my heart said, Lord, lead my steps. He led me to First Baptist Church in Huntsville, a very big church with people all in suits and dresses. And as I sit in the very back, mind you, I just came in for coffee, I look on the stage and a Methodist preacher walks up and starts talking. The screen behind him lights up. The message was a dumpster diving God. And here I sit, looking like the guy on the screen, digging in the dumpster. Same jacket and 3 pairs of clothes on. Well, this message was awesome and directed straight at me, obviously. I spoke with the preacher after the first service, and explained why I had came. He allowed me to try to take coffee to my friend under the bridge and try to invite him back. He wouldn't even get up, so I left the coffee and returned to the church. Then as I sat in the back again, hearing the same message, I couldn't help but cry. God told me, remember the weeping prophet Jeremiah. How close to Jeremy is that? So weeping ferociously, I stood and walked toward the front of the church. The pastor asked me again, how can we help? All I could say was I seek shelter. The church helped me. I thought the shelter was for me and the guy under the bridge. I was wrong. He didn't want the help. The church fed me, got me a room on the other side of Huntsville at the Bama Inn. Soon after I arrived, I got hungry again, and the guy that dropped me off gave me $20 to get food. I set off walking, and what do you know? A couple blocks away, there was that same elderly disabled guy from the Salvation Army with his hands up, lost. God told me to go to him, tell him I had shelter, food, and he would be going home to Ohatchee, Alabama. I did, and we stayed at the hotel, and the next day, with what God supplied, he made it to the bus stop and home. Just let you know that no matter what situation you're going through, God's there. I love you, God loves you, and God bless you.